Welcome to another episode of Tax Leaders Unplugged. Our guest today is Lionel Nobre. Lionel is the VP Tax Latin America at Dell Technologies, and he's based in Miami. He's with Dell for over 18 years now. And before, Lionel worked at BDO and Grant Thornton and started his career at Arthur Andersen. He's also a tax professor at the Texas A&M University, and for the last 10 years, he has been deeply involved with the Tax Executive Institute, also known as TEI, as the Latin America chapter leader, as well as the first Latin American in the executive committee, and he has contributed greatly to many TEI trainings and development initiatives. And in 2023, Lionel also coordinated a publication of a book on tax management in Brazil with Thomson Reuters, and more recently launched an international tax management program focused on in-house tax managers, hosted by two of the most prestigious law schools from Brazil and Argentina. And in this episode today, we will discuss the value of this international tax management program that recently got launched, why it is different from existing courses, and why in-house tax managers constantly need to step up their game. Welcome, Lionel.
No, thank you for having me, Stevie. It's a real pleasure and honor to be with you. We met, I think, a couple of years ago. We met at some TEI events, and it's great to be with a legend like yourself, one of the first tax influencers that we have in the market. So it's an honor and a pleasure to be here with you.
All right. Thanks for the kind words. You are very actively engaged for the Tax Executive Institute, so for TEI, and indeed we met already a couple of times over there. Not only you are leading the Latin American chapter, but also you're participating, as said, in the executive committee. So can you tell us a bit how you ended up being a member of TEI, and tell us a bit about TEI in itself?
Yes. So for those of you that don't know, TEI is a premier, a prominent organization for in-house tax professionals. There's over 5,000 members all over the world. It's based in Washington, D.C., where we have a staff of over 20 people in Washington, D.C. And the TEI has three pillars. It's in-house people. So basically, you participate as an individual. It's not your company that's a member of TEI, but rather yourself as a professional, as an in-house tax professional. So there are three pillars for TEI. One is networking, because we do a lot of networking. There's a very strong chapter in the U.S., many chapters in the U.S. The U.S. started during the end of the Second World War, 1945. That's where it started. So it's been around for over 75 plus years.
Yeah.
And then, in the last 20 years, there's been a large chapter in Europe, folks based, all over the European continent. And then more recently, we've had, APJ, which is Asia, and now Latin America it's about 10 years old. That's when I got involved. But the first pillar is networking. So it's about networking with like-minded folks that work in-house. The second one is education. It's about educating people. It's about putting together training and development for our TEI members.
Yeah.
And the third one is advocacy. So TEI is very involved in advocacy, whether it's advocacy is liaising with tax authorities all over the world on those subject matters that are important for in-house tax professionals and important for their employers. So we're very involved with the OECD when it comes to BEPS Pillar 1, Pillar 2, in the US as well. There's a long history of also being involved with the CRA in Canada, with the tax authorities as well in Australia. And more recently, we've been involved with the tax authorities in Brazil, talking about the new transfer pricing rules and what's not. So my involvement was TEI. They reached out to me back in 2013, 2014, and said, we want to put together a chapter for Latin America. I'm like, well, what is TEI? At that point in my career, I was commuting between Brazil and Miami. So I was not that familiar with the TEI in the US. And then I became familiar with TEI in the US, and we put together the chapter for Latin America. Today, we have over 40 or 50, members for TEI in the region. We put together events every couple of months. Most of the time, we put it together in Brazil, because that is where we have the largest number of in-house tax professionals are based in Brazil.
All right. And so for people that are listening in and that are not yet a TEI member, why should they become a TEI member?
Well, I think It's first of all, it's the networking opportunity. It's to be able to be part of something much bigger than yourself, whether you're in a large company with 1,000 tax people, or whether you're in a tax department that has 3 people. It's good to be able to connect with other folks that are living the same in the same world as you are, which is in-house. So it's about networking. If, for example, if I have an issue in Vietnam, I have somebody at TI. I can go into the TI tool. There's a great platform online now where you can go in and say, I have this issue in Vietnam. Can you help me with Vietnam? So it's about networking, being part of something much bigger than what you are. It's about training. We have two very large conferences in the US, one in Washington every March. We also have one that rotates throughout US cities. Typically, these events have over 400 or 500 participants, and we have trainings. All of the big firms, whether they're law firms or the big four accounting firms, they help train us. They put together events for TI, and it's at the chapter level as well. So if you're in a city like, you know, Austin, Texas, or San Antonio, Texas, or in Cincinnati, Chicago, Houston, or in my neck of the woods, within Sao Paulo or Mexico City, you will have events specifically that are held by the chapters. So it's to be able to connect with people, it's to be able to network with people, it's to be able to be trained, and also if you'd like to take something to the tax authority that's not industry specific, or it's not a controversial. TI can get involved in the advocacy side, and you can sit together with the tax authority and say, this is not me, this is not my company, this is TI, this is TI's view. We have a very strong, governance process around that. We don't talk about anything with the tax authorities, only those things that are really, you know, fundamental. And it's more about, I think, the idea of the TI has is tax is the price that you pay for civilization. So typically TI is not, oh, the tax is too high, the tax is too low. That's typically not an agenda for TI, especially in Latin America. It's more about how challenging it is to comply.
Hmm.
How can I comply? What should I be doing to comply? So that's an organization that's focused on that. It's not a tax, a taxpayer, group where we're fighting for a lower tax burden. That's not the agenda at all. It's more, how can we comply in the best possible way, you know, as part of the ecosystem. The tax ecosystem, it involves the tax authorities, it involves in-house tax professionals like ourselves, the companies and taxpayers, and also involves our advisors, and tax counsel. So at the end of the day, it's helping. TI helps that ecosystem, work, and it's not about less tax. It's about how to comply with the burden, and sharing with the tax authorities how challenging it is, because sometimes tax authorities, they do not know.
Yeah. No, that's making a lot of sense, and I'm truly convinced of the power and the value of industry associations and like in-house tax forums all over the place. So yeah, I like the idea. Thanks for sharing. If I look at your resume, so you're now working at Dell, and you have been there for almost 20 years. What makes the company so sticky for you? I'm always like interested to learn. Like it seems to be a very good employer for you. Tell us a bit, like.
Well, you know, it's a large company, large multinational, like many large multinationals. And the subject matters that I deal with on a daily basis are several ones. So it's just, I used to work in a big four, and in a big four you used to work with services and work with software company, a services company, a manufacturer. Then you're working with people aspects, social security. You have all these. It's like a three-dimensional chess that you're playing when you're in a big four or in a consulting firm, where I get that all in Dell, especially in places like Latin America, where we have different businesses, we have factories, we have software development, we have several things that we have all over the world. And it's about putting all those tax pieces together so that we can comply with the rules of those countries that we do business in. So what has it made it sticky for me? It's three things. One is, I like to work with smart people. And I
Mhm.
would say that the tax organization and the finance organization at Dell, they're super smart people, like super, super smart. For me, that's critical.
Yeah.
Then secondly, I like to feel that what I do and what my team does adds value. And I believe that in our company and many companies in our industry, the tax function has a strategic role, and that is recognized by the C-suite, and we have a role to play, and we have a place at the table. So it's about being recognized as making a difference. So whether I have a team member that's doing VAT taxes in a country like Colombia. I know that if we do that right, if we do a good job, if we pay taxes correctly and everything, we'll be able to be compliant. If we are compliant, we'll be able to maybe, do a better job, and we'll be able to sell more computers, sell more, provide more services to our customers. So if you have the taxes are right, we're actually enabling the business. So I really feel that we can make a difference. So it's about, you know, very smart people. It's
Yeah.
about making a difference, feeling that you're making a difference. And then the third aspect is that you have, you know, you feel valued, and I feel that we are valued. My team and I, we are valued. Me being able to participate in TI, these all these other activities that I participate in, you know, with Dell and with the industry, that is a way for me to feel valued, to be able to speak to you, this morning. It's morning for me. It's afternoon for you, but it's I feel valued in be able to do that. It's not just about money. It's not just about what your title is. It's about feeling valued, getting involved in things. I'm involved in many different training and development activities at Dell. There's so many things going on, and being able to do that in addition to my day job, which is so exciting. It's so exciting. No day is different. You
Yeah.
wake up on a Monday and it's very different to your Friday. And I think that's the exciting part. I've always liked tax because it's like putting a puzzle together. I love,
Yeah.
puzzles. It's puzzles together, and every day is a puzzle. And my
Yeah.
team and I, we get to put together puzzles. So I would say smart people I work with, smart people I can hire, smart people that many of these people, I've been in the company so long because I have good people.
Yeah.
It's about the people that have been with me for many years. I have people on my team that they started as interns, and now they're senior managers, and some of them are directors. We have finance folks that start as interns and today they're VP. So that says a lot about the culture of the company, what we've been able to build over these years in the tax organization.
Yeah. If I zoom in a bit on the second aspect, indeed, what you were
Mhm,
saying, like tax as
mhm.
a strategic function, making a difference, having impact. What are examples of the tax function having impact or making a difference? Can you give some examples how tax can be seen as a strategic function, how that
Yeah.
can be observed, in what that translates?
Well, the way I see it is any kind of new business expansion always has the tax aspects. The way what I would say it is that tax is one of the few areas in a large multinational company whereby you can still see the trees and the forest. So just having that ability of seeing the company end to end,
Hmm.
just there you have a huge strategic value. So many times my team members, it's not only about the tax, getting the tax right. It's about what about the other aspects about around it. Many of my team members are lawyers, some of them are accountants, and we're able to see the business say, why don't you think about doing this? So it's about being more. I think tax becomes strategic when tax is more than tax. You know what I mean? Because if you just okay, tax is compliance, or tax is trying to get the tax right, but tax is way more than that, and that's where we are strategic. So I always joke with my team. I'm like, if the country leader for that business reaches out to the tax team and says, what should I do this operation? It's not even tax related. It's about the market. It's about something else. If they're asking my team, I think that's where, it's being about a trusted business advisor. And
Yeah.
I think tax being a trusted business advisor and using tax as one of the tools that we have, or that we have in our toolbox to be able to advise the business is tax. So that's when we truly are strategic. When you are a trusted business advisor, and when the CFO, and the others that with the CFO, he or she sees tax in that light and says, I want tax here. It's not just tax is not let's not do business. The note, you cannot do this, you cannot do that. It's how to do it, how to enable. And that's in my tax organization, we try and enable more and more how
Yeah.
to do business. And when you're enabling, automatically it's strategic. It's hard. And I know that other companies, they have different, you know, tax has different meanings. Tax can be less strategic. I know you talk a lot about this in many of
Yeah.
your postings and many of your podcasts, where some companies, maybe it's a new company, maybe they're starting their business now, maybe they're young and they don't have the knowledge that tax is so important. The CFO, they're not experienced that tax is so critical. But I think once people get it, it's pretty easy to for tax to be strategic. Obviously, the tax people also have to make themselves understood. And I know you talk a lot about that as well. It's about being understood and not just being a tax geek. A tax geek will not really get you. People don't hire you because you're a tax geek. They hire you because you're a trusted business advisor.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, so you have your senior tax role at Dell. You are very engaged with TEI, and then still you have time left or energy left to come up with an entirely new program for in-house tax and international tax management program. That is so fascinating. Tell us a bit. How did you come up with the idea to start from scratch and build this program for in-house tax and international tax management training?
Well, this has always been in the back of my mind. As I started my career back in Arthur Andersen in Brazil, and many folks from that time, the early 1990s, that's where I started my career. Many of us, we left Arthur Andersen, maybe the early 2000s, mid 2000s, and many of us went into industry, and we always talking to each other,
Yeah.
and we always felt that there was the transition from external to internal is a huge transition. I know you talk about that quite a bit,
Yeah.
but it's always been in the back of my mind, like, wow, law school didn't really prepare me for this. Accounting school, didn't prepare me for this. Business school didn't prepare me for this because I have degrees in those areas, in those
Yeah.
disciplines. I'm like, we should think about something about the management of tax. And I've been talking to this group of people, many of them involved in TI for Latin America, and said, why don't we think of putting some training together regarding the management side of tax? And then I did some research many years ago. What is out there? What does the market have in terms of management for tax? And you can say, well, tax, it's managing a tax department, the same thing as managing FP&A or managing treasury or managing HR or whatever. Yes, there are many aspects are similar when it comes to a large multinational company, a mid-sized company. It's very similar. However, tax has its own uniqueness. Tax has a uniqueness, and I was thinking we need something different. We need something unique because it is a unique profession. So I published this book back in 2023 with Thomson Reuters.
Yeah.
With a colleague of mine. At the time, she was a judge in Brazil. Now she's in private practice, and we had over 15 or 16 different authors write articles about different aspects of managing a tax function for Brazil only.
Yeah.
And that book was like sort of the embryo of, okay, if there's a book, you have 15, 16 people super excited about this, super interested about this. Why don't we transform this into something more than that, into a university course? And then, I already had contacts at the university in Argentina, which is Universidad Turcato de Tella. It's a private university, very well known, very reputable. And at the same time, also reached out to the folks in Brazil at the university there's a postgraduate program that's just specialized in tax, but it's very technical tax. It's very,
Yeah.
very technical. Like it's
Yeah.
deep technical. And I spoke and said, why don't you guys put something together which is more management? They were curious about it. And I said, why don't we give this a try? So about over a year and a half ago, at least 2 years, we started working on a program, working on what this looks like. And the focus of the program is the so-called people skills. I don't like to use soft skills because I don't think they're soft at all. I prefer what Simon Sinek, he calls it the people skills,
Mm-hmm.
the human skills. I prefer those aspects. Those are more difficult than sometimes than the hard skills. So the program has 10 modules, and it goes through all of the different skills that you need in order to be an efficient, tax in-house tax professional. And I was sharing this idea with many people. I would go to conferences at IFA, conferences at TEI, and people would say, wow, what a great idea. What a great idea. There's nothing out there. There's nothing out there. And then I thought, you know what, let's just put it together with the support from TEI. And so in Latin America, we're pretty independent. And they said, you can just, you can go do it. And I have many colleagues of mine from TEI that are helping me put it together. So
Yeah.
we kicked it off in August in Buenos Aires. So it's what we call a blended program. So it's a program that starts in person and it ends in person as well. So Starts in person, as in person, about 30 in-house tax professionals from all over the Americas, folks from Canada, Panama, Argentina, Mexico, Chile, Brazil, in Uruguay. It's part of this program. It's all in English. So for this school, both schools, it's a first to do something in English because they would usually do it in Spanish or Portuguese, but we're doing the whole thing in English. And we kick it off in person in Buenos Aires. And it's each module is 9 hours, about 9 to 10 hours of work
Yeah.
of classes. And the first class was like, it sort of sets the stone, which is an introduction to a tax department.
All
Like,
right.
what is a tax department? We talk about what is the mission of a tax department. So what is your mission? What are the main roles? What are the main responsibilities? And then we go into, those kinds of as aspects as the first module.
So that I interrupt you, the
Mhm.
people that would join for the training already have in-house experience. They are currently in an in-house role, right?
Well, people would apply to the program. We had over, many people applied, and we made sure that we had a group of people that was well balanced. So
Okay.
we had people that were like a little more senior, like maybe the senior manager, director level. We had people that were middle management, and we had a couple that were like in an in-house position, maybe the first couple of years. We actually have 2 advisors that are part of the program because we also invite advisors, but we don't
Okay.
want the full group of advisors. And we
Yeah.
even have some people from the tax authorities.
Oh,
So
wow.
some of
Okay.
the students are even folks from the tax authorities. We have 3 people from tax authorities, 2 from Argentina, and 1 from the CIAT, which is the Center for Inter-American Tax Administrations, which is also supporting us. Not only was a student, but also they're going to be teaching a class.
All
So
right.
it's again, it goes back to the ecosystem. We
Yeah.
have the tax authorities, we have the taxpayers, which are ourselves, and then we have the advisors. So not too many advisors because we don't want it to become an advisor. It's more about in-house, but we need these different perspectives.
Yeah, I get that. I get that. All right. And so you were explaining the first part is introduction to the tax function, to the tax department. Tell us a bit.
So
What is included
the,
there?
and then we talk about a mission. We talk about issues regarding how to choose your advisors, what to expect from your advisor, how to manage your advisors. We also talk about what are the main KPIs that a tax department would have. What are the KPIs when you internally with your company, but what are the KPIs that you have with your advisors? Maybe you have an advisor that's doing some outsourcing or co-sourcing or shared service, whatever it is. How can you know sort of judge what they're doing, evaluate what they're doing, and also it's a 360. They can also evaluate you. They can also evaluate you. So we provide tools for the students so that they can evaluate their advisors. The advisor can evaluate them, provide them with tools to evaluate their teams. There's also self-assessment about how are they as tax leaders, and it's not the generic leadership kind of. It's tax leadership. It's like are you good at explaining tax things in a simple way? You
Yeah.
do a self-evaluation. Are you dumb things down? Do you know who your audience is? These things that you talk a lot about, but at the end of the day, sometimes if you don't see it written, you don't realize that that's what you need to do.
Yeah.
So the first module is a lot about introduction to a tax department. We go deep into that. Since you have over 30 students and it's in person, and many of them are experienced, they also share their experience. So
You,
it's the people training people,
and you
the
refer
students train each
to
other.
KPIs and the identification of it as an example of part one.
Yes.
Have you heard already any surprising KPIs from one of the participants other than the evergreen classics that you typically hear, like cash tax or maybe the ETR or whatever? Anything you want to share? Anything you heard that you were like, whoa,
Well, there are
that's an
KPI,
interesting one?
a KPI that I found interesting, which is sort of common sense, but sometimes we forget about it, is surprises, number of surprises. And it can be good or can be bad.
Yeah.
You and I know in the tax world, any surprise, in the business world, any surprise that's good or bad is not good. Because you can say, oh, I just won a tax case. I thought I was going to win it next year, but I'm winning it this year.
Yeah.
And I told you it's going to be in your budget for next year. It's this year, and maybe it's a couple of $1 million. That's not a good. You won, great job,
Yeah.
but it's a surprise.
Yeah.
So what I found an interesting KPI that I saw was like the number of surprises,
I like
where
that.
a company was tracking the surprises, like the surprise factor.
Yeah, that's
Like
interesting.
you don't want to
Refreshing.
provide surprises. We're not the surprise team. The tax should not be the surprise team.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I
So
hear
that,
you. I hear you and agree there indeed, because it's all about making sure that you can forecast things accurately, and the less or the lower the amount of surprises, the better. And it's for all departments, but definitely in tax. Yeah,
yeah,
true.
and I think the surprise is very well connected to communication. Because if you communicate well, if you communicate on a real time basis, the surprise is not as big as, for good or bad, if you are communicating. And
Yeah,
it depends on your company. It depends on the style. It depends on your culture of your company. There's an article that was published back in 2021 by accounting professors at the Texas A&M, where they were able to tie the the ETR, which is effective tax rates, is one of the KPIs that we look at. I don't think it's the most important one. I think you have to look at the holistic view. But some companies, they look at two things: ETR and tax provision. Those are the only two metrics that you're looking at. If you don't have issues with your tax provision and your ETR is low, your tax team is doing a good job. That for me is like ground zero for a tax organization. That's where you should start. But some organizations, that's where they are, and it's very difficult even to get there. But these two professors, and I'll share it with you, and then you can share it you can share it on in LinkedIn. But these two professors, they were able to tie the ETR to the reputation and to the status of your tax leader. So
Hmm.
the higher your tax leader is in the tax organization, in the C-suite, the lower your ETR is. And it wasn't necessarily about how good your people are, but rather how good they are in communicating, how
And
good they are in their chief tax officer, how good he or she is in being at the table
and
and making a difference.
it's maybe also a combination then of being able to get things done, so to have a seat at the table and to
Yes.
make sure that, and then also that people stick to the policies and the processes that you roll out as a tax function, probably.
Yeah, it's a very interesting because this is, we know that, but I've never seen it like a scientific proof that you need good people, but also you need to be able to communicate. You need to have manage the surprises, be at the be close to the C-suite as a trusted business advisor,
Yeah,
and therefore that's going to let you implement new things, do different things that will reduce your effective tax rate.
yeah,
It's as simple as it's difficult, easily said, very difficult to do.
yeah. Tell us a bit about other highlights of the program, because you
Okay.
explained with the introduction, but what are other
Okay. So the program has other. So the first one is 9 hours of introduction to tax department, and usually that first week is three days of class where it's peppered with outside speakers. So we
yeah,
bring in outside speakers for this first one. We brought in the former national coach for the Argentine rugby team. It's big in Argentina. Rugby is big. So is soccer, but rugby is also big. And he came to talk about you know high performance rugby teams and the World Cup that he was part of, and we try to correlate that to a high performance tax team.
yeah,
Many of the things that he learned, how could we correlate that to tax? So this first, since it's in person, we were able to add other aspects to it where we had, you know, outside speakers. Then the second module, then everything is for the next, couple of months. So starts in August, ends in June. The next couple of months, it's all virtual. So it's 3 hours every Tuesday. So the next one was people management in the tax department. So we had, each I think one of the beauty that I see of this program is you have each class has three professors. One is an academic, the other is an advisor, very senior advisor, and the third one is a senior in-house tax professional.
hmm,
So you have three different perspectives as part of this class, and three people teaching this class. So you have people management and a tax department. So we had an HR director, we had a person from the Big Four, and we had a person from in-house talk about people management. Like, what do people in the tax department want? How to manage performance? How to evaluate performance? What drives tax professionals? Why are tax professionals different to other tax professionals? So that's the module on people management in the tax department.
yeah,
There was also a little bit of discussion about insourcing, co-sourcing, and outsourcing, because that also ties into the people aspect
yeah.
of it. Not only the technical aspect, but also the people. The
The
third
tax
module was
reporting. the tax operating model also. Yeah.
Exactly. It ties. It's at the end of the day, tax is always about people, processes, systems, dash data. Those are the three things, the three,
Yeah.
balls that we're trying to juggle, on a daily basis. Then we have leadership and communication was another a module, which again was very interesting because tax leaders, I would say they're different to others leaders. Many people, they they join tax, and when they leave tax, why do they leave tax? And they go back, they go to a more traditional finance function. I see that a little bit. The reason for that is tax changes all the time. It's tax is changing all the time, and we like change. Tax people like change. I think that's why we're in tax. We like, it's very dynamic. The rules are changing now. The U.S. is becoming more like the rest of the world, where everything is changing every couple of years. Used to be more stable, so now everything's changing. But some people they don't like that change. Some people that like, if you're in HR or if you're in FP&A or if you're in Treasury, it's not so much change. So a tax professional, a tax leader needs to be able to manage this change. So it's about, it's a master class every day on change management.
Yeah.
That tax, and sometimes people struggle with that. And tax professionals, that's sort of our natural fit. We know the only constant things are going to change. And I know you've written a lot about that, but that's where it is. So this whole leadership program, leadership aspect module is about that aspect, how to manage change. Then we have another module, which is tax compliance and reporting, more technical, but very
Hmm.
generic on tax compliance and reporting, sort of moving towards the electronic world. Like, what does the electronic world? Because we see more. Then we have direct taxation and transfer pricing together in direct taxation. It's important to note that some professors are from the IBFD, which is in your neck of the woods, International Bureau of Fiscal Documentation. Some
Yeah.
professors are with very large, multinationals. Some professors, they teach at Vienna. So we have professors, from the region, but also from Europe. Then we have another module, which is tax technology and automation, and how to transform your tax team. Then we have one of the second last module is reputation management and how to manage your relationship with the tax authorities, because
Yeah.
that's something critical. It's becoming more and more critical. Then we have a tax audit module. And then the final module, or what we call the capstone, will be the graduation in Sao Paulo in June of 2025. Is going to be a business case. So
Hmm.
we're going to run a business case with these 30 students where they're going to run a tax department. And I can already tell you, and if they listen to the podcast, they know everything that you can imagine is going to happen in this case. Like, and they're going to be able to manage it. We're going to have judges and judge, which based on KPIs, based on, that case, that's the graduation, and their grade will be based on this business case. So we're going to divide them in teams, and they're going to be competing to see which is the best tax department, and we're going to have people judging that.
So they will be working on a tax project or handling a controversy
Uh,
or
all of the above
all of the
at
above.
once.
Nice.
All of the above at once. All of the above at once at a very furious pace. And then,
Yeah.
we're gonna get to role play, and then some of my peers, other professors, we're gonna be the board, or we're gonna be the audit partner, and we're gonna have role play, so they get to feel how it is to manage a tax department,
Yeah.
in a very adverse environment. So we putting that business case together that they're gonna be running in June and then together with that, we're gonna have other speakers and outside speakers and what's not, and then there'll be a graduation.
Sounds fantastic, and I think a very, very compelling agenda. You refer to, I think, under the leadership and
Mhm,
people
mhm.
skills, to the necessity of being able to deal with change as a tax leader
Yes.
or as an in-house tax person. Can you disclose already a bit, like what is the secret? What does it take for a tax person to be able to deal with change? Because to your point, it's all over the place and it's only getting worse. Can you already disclose a bit?
No, but I think it's a there's no magic formula. Everybody deals with change differently, but I think in my experience, you can only control what's under control. I like the analogy. I think it's the SEALs, the Navy SEALs, or the Green Berets, where they say that you can only control what's like 6 feet, what is it, 2 meters around you. Everything else, you do not have control over that. When you go into a battlefield, because
Yeah.
these are military. It's a military analogy. So I try and focus on that. I can really influence, change that, can work on that, try and expand those 2 meters even further. But I know that things are going to change, and get through the what is it the phases of change where you go from anger. Isn't it anger? You go until you get to acceptance, and then you get to when you're energetic. Try and
Yeah.
get to that as quickly as possible, because that's what you're going to be doing all the time. So it's about that. It's about helping people get through that, and helping them where they are in their journey. I know this sounds very psychological and super, but I think that's what it is, especially this day and age where tax is changing so fast all over the world. It's not, and it's changing at a local level, it's changing at a international level at the same time.
Yeah.
And I like the analogy, like it's a three-dimensional chessboard, and you have to be able to do that. And I think it's about understanding yourself, being self-aware of yourself, of your strengths, of your team, and just managing that. I think there's no secret sauce to this one. I think change management, and I'm really pushing in this program, and even at the company at Dell, where we need to be doing more when it comes around to change management. Because in this world where we're using a lot of artificial intelligence, where we're going more automation, more standardization, more transformation, change management is going to be a constant. And the machines, as far as I know, so far they cannot yet do change management. It's up to us. So we better get good at that. And I think tax people at the forefront of change management, because that's what we do.
Yeah.
Because tax is change.
Fully agree. Fully agree there. You also refer to the reputational aspect of managing a tax function. Can you tell a bit more there? What's included in that part of the program? Because I like that a lot, and I'm also seeing more and more that, yeah, reputation can come in many forms, or it's let's say struggling a bit to find my words, but it's hard to build up, but it's very easy gone, right?
Yes.
And the reputation is obviously important more and more also in the context of cooperative compliance, where if you are seen as a good taxpayer or as a tax function that has tax operations under control, that you get lower risk ratings and less amount of tax audits and whatnot. But yeah, what are the secrets there around
I think
managing the reputation?
I think the reputational management has become more and more critical, as you know, because tax used to be in the back pages of the financial sections of the newspaper, and
Yeah,
now tax for the last 20 years has come to the forefront for
yeah,
good and for bad reasons. Of the good players and the bad players out there. So now tax is in the forefront of economics pages on newspapers and also magazines. So that's the first aspect. So now it's more visible. Secondly, I think that in this world whereby everything is electronic, I know you're in Europe and I'm in Latin America, and we face this electronic environment, which the US is not there yet. The US is far from that. I think in electronic environment, it's your reputation as good as your data. It's as good as your reporting. Where in the good old days, if you were a large company in a small city in Europe or in even Latin America, and people knew that you were a good corporate citizen, you wouldn't be subject to a lot of audits. You wouldn't be under the scrutiny, because it would be more of a function of, it's a good corporate citizen. I know this company. I know they're good people. I deal with them. The tax inspector might have a perception and a personal relationship with some people. And now it's all in the tool. So if you make a mistake, even though you might have a stellar reputation in the old world, because you you now in the new world, you will have a dashboard which will say there are mistakes here and here and here, because that the number one challenge, and I see this in your podcasts, number one challenge for any in-house tax professional is to get everything right. And the tax authorities want it 100% right. And it's the tax authorities' business, it's their core business is tax. In my
yeah.
company, my core business is not tax. So unfortunately, there might be issues, there might be errors.
Yeah, and
There's
there are a couple of problems, I would say, where in tax it's always gray. in the majority of
I'm not even
only.
going there. I'm not even going to the gray. I'm going to the black and white where because of systems changes or because of business changes, sometimes it's hard to comply at the velocity that you that you need to, and you have to, it's not perfect. Compliance is expected to be perfect. And now, raise
Yeah,
your hand, those of you that have perfect compliance all the time, everywhere.
yeah, it's impossible. I think it's fair to say that it is impossible. But what I will say is like it's somehow tricky to attach reputation to data because we all know that raw data without context in the tax world is pretty dangerous, right? It's there is a lot of subjectivity or like room for interpretation for the data,
No, no,
even if
I agree with you, Stevie. But I think what's happening is that the tax authorities, they're going with these technologies, which are very sophisticated, far more sophisticated than we on the taxpayer side, whereby they have these red flags. And let's say that in country X, Y, Z, if you have 20 red flags, that means that you have a bad reputation. Whatever that red flag is, if you get
yeah, yeah.
your VAT in 5 times wrong, therefore your rating, and some countries are like that. You go from an A rating to a C rating.
Yeah, because of a
And
trend analysis that
exactly,
right?
exactly. So that's also part of your reputation. That unfortunately, and that's we didn't have to deal with that many years ago. Many years ago, your reputation was what people thought of your company, what people knew of your company, whether the kind of interactions you would have with the tax authorities, and that would establish your relationship. So going back to the classes we're going to be working on both aspects. So we have one of the professors is a government affairs and corporate affairs, VP of a large U.S. company in Latin America, and she has a lot of experience in very different businesses. So we have that aspect of it. Another one of the professors is actually with the tax authorities.
Mm.
He's with the tax authority, and say from my perspective, and he's one of the folks trying to implement cooperative compliance in Brazil.
All right.
So you have that aspect where cooperative compliance has a lot to do with reputation.
Yeah.
Has a lot, it starts with reputation. For you even to start to be in the game, you need to have a stellar reputation.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And then
Absolutely.
the third person is a tax person that's trying to manage these two or three things at the same time. So we're going to be looking at they're going to be looking at the reputation from this data if there's a red flag, but also this other reputation which is the gray area, and managing the whole reputation as a whole. It's a different game than it was 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah. And it will constantly further evolve. I think the game will, I guess, become more and more difficult due to the technologies that are rising and the tax authorities applying more and more next generation technologies, including AI, on your data. So, yeah, it's an interesting one. Will the program be available for people in Europe or rest of world
Well,
or?
the challenge, interesting enough, I thought when you put this program together, I thought that the biggest challenge would be to put the material together and to have high, I would say, world-class professors. That was a challenge, but we were able to do it. We have the material is amazing, and the professors are amazing, and they're already bought into the idea because everybody that we're talking to, they believe that this is a need of the market. The biggest challenge that we have is the time zone. That's a
Yeah.
killer. The time zone is a killer because we do have professors from in Switzerland. We have professors you know that are in Amsterdam, or professors that are in London. And if you have a class that starts at 6 p.m., you know, Eastern EST, that's like what is it,
Yeah.
midnight in Europe.
Midnight. Yeah. Yeah. Or beyond
So
midnight.
in
Yeah.
order to have students from all over the world to open it up to Europe, I don't really know how to crack the code on this one because there are two ways we can go. We can go with you can go with what they call asynchronous classes, which I teach at Texas A&M, and it's an asynchronous model where you record the class, and then the students watch the class, and then you
Yep.
have like business hours where you review the material with the students. You have that aspect, which I prefer to have on live as we're having now, and the students can contribute, and I think it's a great experience, especially because we met in person and then we continue virtually. you have that rapport from the beginning,
Yeah,
and the
yeah, but
spirits
that,
they know each other. It's amazing. It really works well. So
yeah.
maybe the way to go would be, I don't know, maybe offer the same class twice in different time zones, or even make it, I don't know, in person. I don't know. I don't know how to. What is your thoughts on that? Because you probably deal with that all the time. Because you're like in a more central time zone.
I, I would say you are probably in the pilot phase right now, in the US or in the Americas in general. And I would say, I guess the potential next step could be that you just copy paste it into the other regions. But then, like with maybe then the majority of the teachers in that region, and then the exceptions of the teachers, the professors in the other regions, because I think the multicultural aspect is very important because we as in-house tax, we are dealing with all of the countries, right?
Yeah,
So that makes it very relevant. So, but I mean, let's not go into discussing what it can be in the future. Maybe final question: what do you think the future training wise will look like for the in-house tax function? Will it be equally split about technical stuff, and then the people skills and everything you also include in your program, or will there be a shift in away from the technical into the other aspects because of maybe technology helping so much on the technical side of things? What is your idea, your view?
I think actually one of the classes that I teach a mini version of this program at Texas A&M, and one of the classes, it's because this is about 100 hours of class. The Texas A&M version is 6 hours. Trying to the other thing 100 hours in 6 hours. But there's a part that I talk about what is the tax profession of the future and how to prepare for the future. And I agree with you, Stevie, where the professional of the future, the tax profession of the future is probably going to be maybe 30%, tax, maybe, maybe another 20% business, and then the other 50% would be technology.
Hmm. Interesting.
Technology is, and this is not, and why do I say that? I was in Montreal a couple of months ago with IFA, International Fiscal Association, where we ran a workshop on AI in tax. And we were using one of the tools that is a well-known tool out there, which is BlueJ Legal. And then we ran a workshop for this is for advisors, not for in-house, where tools like BlueJ really help you with your research, get to the answer that you need. And there was one of the there's several professors teaching that class, and one of them from Yale, he's like the tax profession of the future, especially with law schools in the U.S. and in Canada, is going to be more like a programmer and less as like a tax litigator. And I'm exaggerating what he said, okay? I'm paraphrasing what he said, but I agree with that because I think in the future it's about how do you parameterize the systems, get the parameters right in your systems so you can pull the right data, you can calculate the tax right, because that's going to be so critical. But you need to know the tax to do that. It's not like you're not just IT an IT programmer. You're not a software programmer, because a software programmer can put together, a program to send a person to a moon, or to a robot that can cook a meal. But it doesn't have to know a lot about, you know, the moon or the meal. But when it comes to tax, the person has to be deep in the rules of tax in order to program and parameterize the system, put in the parameters. So
Yeah.
I see that technology is going to be more and more important. And I know I'm being a little exaggerating, but maybe 50%, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's, between 40 and 50%. A lot of business and tax is going to become, it's going to become still very relevant, but the tool is going to come up with the answer. And as a tax professional, I'm going to have to be able to, analyze that answer and do the smell test on that answer, whether it makes sense or not. And this whole program, the International Tax Management Program, is sort of focusing on those aspects. It's like the smell test,
Yeah.
like getting people to do that, because the tax technical, and I'm not talking about the gray, because the gray is always going to be the gray. And the gray, you always need an advisor. And the gray, you always need to be super technical to get to the gray. But I mean all the rest. Where today you spend a lot of time, as you've said many times, on the operational side of it, on the the rinse and repeat and doing it over and over again. So
Yeah.
that should go away, and you end up having to make sure that the system is doing it correct. That those are my thoughts.
Time will tell, and I think anytime soon we will already see major shifts in the skill set and the training needs for in-house tax function. Lionel, we are by the end of the podcast, and I have one question that I
Mhm.
typically raise at this time, which is,
Mhm.
what is your biggest piece of advice that you would offer to aspiring in-house tax people that want to excel in their careers, that maybe one day want to be in your shoes? What is your golden piece of advice that you would give them?
Well, first of all, I would say it's a super exciting time to be in tax because there are many things going on. I wish I would start in my career now and not like 30 or 40 years ago. I think it's such exciting time. I would say be curious, be curious, stay curious. Be open to different things, thinking differently. I don't use the terminology think out of the box. I prefer to say make your box bigger.
Hmm.
Let's make our box the biggest box possible. I want a box that's the size that I want it to be, and not nobody's gonna box me. Nobody's gonna box me.
Yeah.
So I would say be curious. That's my recommendation to people. I have a team with over 30, 40 people, and that's what I'm saying. Just stay curious. Stay true to yourself. It's an amazing profession. You can learn so much, but just be curious and challenge the status quo because things are changing. We need people that are good at that.
All right. Super clear. Thanks for sharing that, Lionel. I
Pleasure.
really enjoyed the conversation. I'm really also blown away about the program that you built and put together, the content of it, and I'm really convinced about the value for in-house tech. So I hope anytime soon to also see it available outside of the Americas, but we will keep an eye on your socials. And yeah, thanks for the conversation.
Thank you, Stevie, and I look forward to further engaging with you, and you can help us, and let's continue the conversation. Thank you very
All
much.
right. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.